Greetings, everyone. Joining me on today's Next Gen North podcast is Darlene Chin. Darlene is a proud Territorian, a prominent businesswoman, and emblematic of the Chinese legacy in the top end. In today's episode, Darlene takes us through some of her family history, early life, and journey into business. I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, well, Darlene Chin, thank you for joining us on the Next Gen North podcast.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
I've never listened to a podcast, So
no, is that right?
This might be the first one I listen to.
So the format you're not familiar with, or
No. Does that make me a bit of a dinosaur? I've never listened to a podcast.
no, I don't know. I think it's just the changing media landscape these days. Like it's just a conversation, and it's just with a camera and
Sure.
recording equipment.
And so when people, can I ask you some questions?
Please.
Why do people listen to podcasts, or when? Is it when they're driving, in the car? Is that why? Because you have sort of, your hands are busy, you're doing something, but you've got time to listen?
I think there's some of that component to it. Like you'd have your tradies that would just probably have a podcast on in the background, your people at work. But I think the main idea is that it's long form, so that when people go on, I guess, mainstream media these days, they get a 3-minute grab of like these sort of hysterical catchphrases and whatever, and then they get sort of taken out of context and all that sort of stuff. Whereas with podcasts, you can actually really explore who someone is, what their ideas are, depending on what the subject,
topic, yeah,
anything, you can really sort of delve deep into the weeds. And I think people are starting to appreciate that more.
Okay.
Because
What made you want to do this?
Well, it was a friend of mine whose company this is gave me the opportunity. Like I've never really been, that way inclined in terms of getting into the media. But yeah, just an opportunity arose. I was at a sort of interesting crossroads in my career. I've got a small business myself, so he actually allowed me to maintain my small business and do this at the same time, whereas previously I had a public service job, which is probably a little bit more defined in terms of your hours. So,
Yes.
you either worked at the public service or you worked at your
8 till
business.
4:21.
That's right. Yep. So this was an opportunity to maybe get ahead a bit more.
Okay.
I could do this, and I could have my market stall down at Mindle Beach. So
yes.
yeah. So off camera, you mentioned dressing or giving suits to the Timorese Prime Minister. That sounds exciting.
I'm excited by this. It just came up. I don't know if I can talk about this.
We can edit it out if you...
Yeah, okay. It could be top secret, hey. It just came up this week. Someone contacted me and they needed something in a hurry. So I've been on the internet looking at, because I don't get to meet him or measure him up or whatever,
Yeah.
and because I'm famous for my measuring skills.
Inseam.
So I've been looking at pictures on the internet so that I can really gauge whether the sizes they're giving me seem accurate to me.
Yeah.
After 31 years in business, I've got a pretty good eye for, or two actually,
Yeah.
for sizes. So when we do, for instance, when we do weddings and a lot of the groomsmen are interstate, and generally we don't get to see them until a day or two before the wedding.
Right.
So I get their measurements and I get a picture of the person as well, and my highly trained eye can tell if they match up to those sizes that we've given or not.
Right. Because men typically don't really have any idea. Like I didn't realise that, there's leg length, all that sort of stuff. There's so much more that actually goes into it than a normal person like me who actually really understands. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Menswear, I find, is much more complicated than women's wear in terms of sizing, because sizing tends to be much more accurate for waist sizes and neck and chest, and but the beauty of it is that men don't generally care what their bum looks like and everything. so you don't have to be looking at it from every angle.
Yeah. So is that typical for you? Are you fitting dignitaries quite often? Is this just a normal Friday for you, or is this kind of like a special occasion? Sort of what's day to day or week to week life look like in the shop?
Oh, I like to think, seriously, without sounding cheesy, that really every customer that comes in is a special occasion for us. So in terms of dignitaries, I get most of the territory male politicians,
Right.
Senior public servants, and, everyone in between. So if they're not shopping with me, I'd be asking why not and where are they shopping? Because I really think, I honestly believe, and I'm sure everyone agrees, that we have to support local businesses like mine.
Sure.
Otherwise they cease to exist, and people already complain about how small the offer is in Darwin. There's so few good retail businesses. And, that's partially because we have a very small population and it's easy to forget. And certainly tourists don't realise how small we are.
Mm-hmm.
So they think, oh, really, there's no department store here? You're it? And sorry, I digress a bit, don't I?
No, that's okay. That's what the podcast is for. It's about exploring those sort of those ideas.
Okay. So it's important that we support the little businesses that are here, because shopping online isn't instantaneous. And so many times people come into me and say, oh, I ordered something online but it didn't arrive in time. And it's a real shame that we're the fallback position, not the number one go-to position.
Yeah.
If more people were, in my opinion, were going directly to a local shop first to find what they want, then maybe we could carry a bigger range. But if we're the afterthought, then, that's a real shame, because we're missing so many opportunities that we could fulfill.
Well, if the politicians and all those sort of dignitaries, if you're obviously the go-to, then so you must be doing something right, to have lasted for 31 years.
I know, 31 years. I think I'm just really stubborn, and I don't know when to give up. No, it's not that bad.
Let's say resilient, I think, is really...
Well, yeah, stubborn though, for sure. I know. I really love it. And I'm thankful that it turned out to be good at it. When I started I opened my store in 1993. When I started thinking about it, I had no experience in retail
right.
or menswear. I've just been winging it for a long time. And like I said, it turns out I have a real passion for it, and I do okay at it. I take a lot of pride in my store and what we do there. My crew, my team are fantastic, and we try to be super professional and look after everyone.
Yeah. So you've been in business since '93, which is an amazing amount of time. What was the motivation that really drove you to, start, get into retail? Because I'm sure that, the retail landscape was a lot different in the early '90s than it is now, with competition and things, the business landscape changing.
Yeah.
What was the motivation?
Well, I was living in Melbourne at the time, and I had been away from Darwin for many years. I lived in Perth at first, and then went to Melbourne. The company I worked for in Perth transferred me to Melbourne. And I loved Melbourne. What a great city.
Yeah.
But my parents, as parents do, just kept saying, why don't you come home? Why don't you come home?
Heard that before.
Yes. And, when I was in my heyday in Melbourne having a great time, I didn't ever dream I would live in Darwin again. I used to come home every Christmas and think, oh, it's so sweaty, my shoes are getting dusty, I came home because very family oriented, but I always felt like, I can't wait to get out again.
Yeah.
And I never dreamed I would live in Darwin again. So then one of my uncles was the manager of my father's family business. My grandparents were, I guess, pioneers here in the Territory. My grandfather was born in Darwin, but my grandmother came from China, and they had an arranged marriage.
Right.
And so my grandmother travelled between China and Darwin a lot because she wasn't given permanent residency at that time. So my father's first, I think 5 siblings were 4 or 5 were born in China,
Right.
and then they would travel sort of between Darwin and southern China. Excuse me. So then once my grandmother fully settled here, they had various businesses, and then I'm skipping around over it.
That's all right.
Then during the war, Second World War, they moved to Adelaide to live, and they had a cafe in Rundle Street.
Oh, wow.
Near the markets in Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the war, they came back to Darwin and opened the Stuart Chin business, which menswear, boyswear, haberdashery. They did tailoring as well.
Right.
A couple of my uncles were tailors. And so, long story. So one of my uncles in 1992 decided that he wanted to retire. And he had spent his whole life working in his mother's, in the family business.
Yep.
So my dad rang me and he said, your uncle wants to retire. So what do you think about coming home to manage the store? And, my dad and my mum, bless them, they just think I'm capable of anything. So I thought about it and I decided I would come home to Darwin. And I said, I'll do it, but I would need to change the business and modernise it. They were selling hard yakka, Palaco shirts, some iconic old Aussie brands.
Yeah.
But it was, in my mind, it was old men's clothes.
Right.
And workwear.
Workwear, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
At one stage, they had the contract to manufacture the uniforms for the Northern Territory Police Force.
Oh, wow.
That was a long time ago.
The old tan ones?
Yeah, but way back, I couldn't even tell you the years, but long before I was born, and that was a really long time ago.
So there was probably good money in workwear and, contracts for the government and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yep.
And maybe there just wasn't capability from anyone else as well at that time.
Sure.
So I did some research. I wandered around the shops in Melbourne and looked at brands that I thought would be great. And I always did feel that there was a gap in the market here. And, friends, when I said, I'm going to come home and do this thing, they all said, you're crazy. Nobody dresses up in Darwin. You won't have any customers. And I thought, surely that can't be true. There must be people who, but they shop when they travel.
Yep.
Because they couldn't necessarily get what they wanted here. Having said that, there were more menswear stores in Darwin in 1993 than there are now.
You're joking.
In the mall, there was King of Clubs, there was the Chin's menswear. Actually, the Chins, including my own extended family,
Right.
they had menswear stores. There were easily, I would say, 10 shops in the city selling menswear.
And that were all viable? businesses?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's much smaller scale than mine has grown to be.
Sure.
But well, my grandma's shop, that was pretty big, and the Sun Chong Lung shop, which was on the corner of Kavanagh and Nucky Streets, where I had moved to for a while too. Sun Chong Lung, that was a really big shop.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was King of Clubs and Chin's Menswear. There was a really cool little shop in the Star Village. So yeah, there was quite a big range.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? They've all sort of disappeared. I guess that landscape has been taken over by national brands in that are at Casuarina. I try
Right.
not to use the C word, but Casuarina.
Right.
So in the city now, it's just kind of me. And then there's some other little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with
That's
that.
okay.
So I came home.
Yeah, it provides good context about, what the...
Yeah. Oh, sorry,
Darwin
that's where
used
we
to-
were.
Yeah, it's
I'm
okay.
rambling away. So yeah, I thought, well, people must shop when they travel, so maybe I can capture some of that market.
Sure.
And I thought, well, I have 4 brothers, and surely I've got an instant customer base having 4 brothers. They're not snappy dresses though, unfortunately. And so I came home, and then my uncle changed his mind, and he said, okay, I'm not going to step away from that business. Why don't you just open your own shop? Thought, okay. So I did.
Wow.
And I just started from scratch. I was very fortunate. My grandmother was very generous, and she said I could have rent-free period in lieu of the work that I had to do to do a shop fit in her building.
Right.
That Stonehouse building on Kavanagh Street had not been occupied other than... So there's 5 shop fronts in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And my granny lived in one, and her business was in one. And the other 3 were empty, derelict.
Right.
And nothing had been in any of those spaces since Cyclone Tracy. One of my cousins had a shop up to Cyclone Tracy.
Yeah.
So there was no electricity, there was no ceilings, no wall. Like the walls were the old stone walls, which had were in a pretty bad state. So we had to do extensive work there, structural and fixing it up. So she gave me a rent-free period, which ended up lasting for quite a few years. And she was so happy to see me there and doing something new. So I was really lucky. Took a big burden off having to establish a business from nothing.
Yeah.
Without the worry of having big rent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Gave me a really good head start. So without her, I wouldn't be here, I guess, talking to you about it. So I started that shop fit in 92. We opened in July 93.
So do you think that starting from scratch in menswear was almost an advantage in the end? You didn't have... you don't have a built-in customer base, which is... obviously makes it a little bit harder, but because you're sort of tailoring it maybe to a...
Tailoring?
To a specific market, do you think there was any advantages or disadvantages in that?
Well, I think that starting from scratch, I didn't have any preconceived ideas about how it should be. I just wanted to make sure that I was choosing product that wasn't already available. What's the point of that,
Sure.
There's no point in any of us in this city selling the same thing as someone else, really, because there's so many brands out there that we should be offering everyone more choice, not more of the same or
Right.
competing on price.
Yep.
So, I just scouted around and found brands that I thought were quality affordable and, not seen here. Desirable as well. Nobody wants to sell something no one wants, right? So I guess that was an advantage for me because, I didn't have any formula and I was just starting out and seeing how it would go.
Sure.
And so I just really scoured Melbourne, the department stores and the other shops in Melbourne and looking at brands that I thought were decent.
Yep.
And that was really good. My boyfriend at the time, he liked dressing up, so that was handy to have some guidance.
Yep.
And I don't know, I think I have pretty good taste.
Yep.
So I did all right.
That helps. So when you were in Melbourne and Perth, what sort of work were you doing there? Did it sort of overline or overlap with the retail side of it, or was it completely different and made a huge jump from what you were doing down there to coming and starting a business in Darwin?
Yeah, huge jump. My background was I started working in my family business, my parents' business, which was petrol stations.
Okay.
So my brothers and I grew up. My dad got his first servo, was on the corner of Daly and Smith Streets in the city in 1974.
Mm-hmm.
So we grew up pumping petrol, cleaning windscreens and, checking under the bonnet, doing all those things.
Grease monkey sort of.
Yeah, and
stuff.
also having to look cheerful doing it, which, is pretty tedious, checking people's tyres and no one likes to do it for themselves. So, it was great that we were there. And so we learnt some really great customer service because we had to be there doing something nobody wants to do.
Yeah, with a smile.
And going, hi, thanks for coming.
Yeah, and people appreciate that, don't
Yeah,
they?
they do.
Yeah.
They do. And also you're just connecting with people all the time. So we built up a regular client base, and so from that servo, after Cyclone Tracy, of course, everything got wiped out.
Did it survive Tracy, the servo?
It did, and our house didn't. So we actually, in the initial days after, on Christmas Day, from then on, we lived in the lube bay. They're called a lube bay, where you fix cars.
Yeah.
There's hoist there, and so we just had camp stretchers, and we slept there. The 7 of us, my 4 brothers, mum and dad, and me. And I have very vivid memory of having to bathe in a cut off, like a 44-gallon drum, cut in half, and catching the water off the roof of the building. I shouldn't talk about.
Sorry. You okay?
It's okay. Yeah.
You're all right to continue?
It's weird memories, hey?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was hard. So, jeepers, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm a crier.
That's okay.
And then my younger brothers and mum and I were evacuated out of Darwin on the Hercules.
Yep.
That was a horrible trip. I got really sick. Spent the whole flight vomiting.
Was that like air sickness or
yeah,
something? Really?
Yes. Yeah, terrible.
No.
Because, we were just, there's no seats. You just sit on these webbing mesh sort of racks, really.
Yeah.
And my older brothers stayed here with Dad, and they were...
It's okay.
Oh, man, they worked so hard.
You guys got through, though?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my younger brothers and I had a great time in Queensland, living the dream.
Sun and
At the-
surf.
yes.
And all that stuff.
And my older brothers and Dad stayed here.
Yep.
And they were, because there was no electricity, they were pumping petrol out of the ground by hand so that people could
survive.
and get out of town.
Yep.
And then they worked to put a roof back on Our house in Nightcliff.
So you were in Nightcliff at the time?
Yeah, the business was in the city.
Yep.
Our house was in Nightcliff, so everything there was really badly affected.
Right.
But my parents had a house on Nightcliff Road, and behind it there were 3 flats built behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the roofs all came off, but they and the house was obliterated. There was really nothing left.
Was it a tropo or sort of?
It was a elevated house.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So we were parked underneath. You know, everyone parked their cars underneath the house,
Yeah.
and that's where we spent the night while the cyclone raged around us. And so then my dad and my brothers, you know, reinstated the roof onto the flats of that property.
Yep.
And when we came home, that's where we lived. We lived for a while in a demountable that was parked at the service station.
Yep.
In the city. Yeah, it was a really hard time. And so, anyways, on to cheerier things. Where did that go? I don't know how the cyclone came up, sorry.
That's okay. So during that time, what primary school did you go? Were you in primary school? Or
No, thank you. I'm much younger than that. Oh, yeah, primary school, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I was up to, so just prior to Cyclone Tracy, we were living in Francis Creek. It was a little mining town, iron ore mining town near Pine Creek.
Oh, wow.
And then my dad, we left there and came back to Darwin, and he bought that business.
So, sorry, if I may quickly, so are you part of that Chinese connection to Pine Creek, you know, the migrants that came in the 1800s?
Yes.
You know, the railway and the gold fields in Pine Creek, you know, were they all part of that?
My family were always Darwin-based.
Right.
So no, not well, there's relations.
Right.
I think everyone's kind of intermarried
Sure.
families and connected in some way.
Yep.
So no, my family all stayed in Darwin.
Okay.
And so Francis Creek, it was nice. We lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's when mining towns had little communities. You know, everyone didn't fly in and out. People lived there.
So I lived in Tennant Creek for 8 years in the 90s,
yes,
which is where my mother was born as well, and she spent you know, a lot of her life growing up there when it was basically, you know, it was a dirt road, and you know, then it was but it was a mining community attached to it, and thriving little place, but exactly like what you're describing.
And it's a shame that people don't want to live in these small communities like that, because it's a really nice place for kids to grow up with so much freedom.
Absolutely.
And well, for us it was, you know, we had a really good time. And there was a school. There was a one-teacher school. We all were in the same classroom.
Yep.
Once you're out of primary school, then my older brothers had to go to a boarding school in Darwin.
Okay.
But so from Francis Creek Primary, then we came back to Darwin. I went to Rapid Creek Primary, and then after the cyclone, we went to Stuart Park. There were less schools to choose from then.
Sure.
And because we were pretty much in the city then, living in a demountable, the 7 of us in one room, and we chose to go to Stuart Park Primary because it was convenient for Mum and Dad.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Stuart Park now, and my daughter goes to Stuart Park
It's a really
daycare.
nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like it's a nice suburb. It's quiet. There's old money and new money there. It's funny, you know. It's still got a lot of those public, you know, the old government houses, and so it's a really interesting sort of cross section, I think, of society is Stuart Park. It's a beautiful spot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I met my best friend now. My best friend in the whole world. I met at Stuart Park Primary in 1975.
Wow. There you go. So family seems like it's a really sort of important thing for you. What's your view of the legacy of Chinese migrants in the territory? You know, like they've left obviously a massive impact on business and culture and everything. What's your sort of feel about the legacy that they've made?
Well, I see the Chinese community as having contributed hugely to the flavour of Darwin. My great-grandfather moved here in 1883, and imagine what Darwin was like then.
Would it have been Palmerston even in those days?
Probably was called Palmerston.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should know more about my family history, shouldn't I? But I look back at pictures of Darwin in those days, and everyone was so beautifully dressed.
They
you
were,
know?
yeah.
I'm envious.
Flowing white gauze and that sort of,
Yes,
yeah.
or like waistcoats, and everyone was dressed up and everyone wore a hat.
Yeah.
So my great-grandfather moved here, and he came from China. And so he had various businesses and procured some property during his life. So you see, you'll see around Darwin there's a lot of buildings, less so now, I guess, that have the Chin name, the Chin building, the Chin this and that.
Yeah.
So in the CBD, he owned quite a bit of real estate. But you have big families and it all gets divvied up, right?
Yeah.
Every generation, get the bits of the pie get smaller. And
Yeah.
so my grandmother, when they came back to Darwin after World War II, the government had resumed the land in Darwin.
Right.
So they had first dibs, I guess, to purchase back some of their property
Right.
that had been owned by whomever. So my grandmother bought the Stonehouses property. My dad said when they came back to Darwin, there was a big bomb crater in the backyard of that block, and he has memories of playing in this big bomb crater. So yeah, funny little things. So
Were they in town for the bombing of Darwin?
no,
Or were they?
no,
Did they arrive?
They had already been evacuated.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my grandmother bought that building back, and she started her business selling menswear and doing the tailoring. So yeah, that business lasted until my uncle who ran it retired. They sold the building in, I'm trying to think the year now, about 2005. That was the time that I moved out of that building and moved to the corner of Kavanagh and Nucky Streets where Sun Chong Lung was.
Yeah.
So I loved being in that building. I started my business. My grandmother lived there, and so I spent a lot of time with her. Funny because I don't speak any Cantonese, and her English, even though she'd lived here for 70 years or something, she didn't speak a lot of English because she didn't need to.
Yeah, sure.
Her kids all spoke Chinese, or all her friends did.
Yeah.
Her community. But I'd take her shopping when Woolies was on the corner there.
I remember. Yep.
We used to go. I'd take her grocery shopping there, and she was good. She knew numbers. But she would come into my shop and stand there proudly watching customers come in and out, and every day she would say, "How much money did you make today?" And she was so proud. I'd go, "Oh, $200. Oh, $200." And seriously, it was funny. And then she'd come in and say, "How much?" I'd say, 300, 300, and slowly it would get more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad, one day I said to my dad, Ang Yen always asks me, how much money I've made today. And he said, once I got to 500, he said, okay, stop telling her. She'll just think that's just crazy money. $500 a day.
She was proud.
Yeah, she was really proud.
Yeah.
And I just found a photo, actually. I was going through some old photos this week, and I found a picture of her standing in my shop looking really proud. That's nice. So, yeah, I miss having her around. She passed away in 2000. She was just shy of 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, this is really good.
Amazing.
Yeah, she died at home in her own home, and
That's the dream.
yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Her family looked after her right till they did shifts. That 7 days. My dad would stay 2 nights, and another uncle and his wife would stay, and the whole family just looked after her.
Just a different generation.
Yeah, it is.
My mother's mother, so my grandma, my mum's side, she made it to 102.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Living in Alice Springs, in the old days as well. So, Alice Springs, hard conditions. They didn't have much money, but somehow they just made things work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
unreal.
same. My grandmother, she lived in that Stonehouse building and raised her children there. She had 11 children.
My God.
She was like 4'0" as well. What a powerhouse she was. And raised 11 children, ran the business, and, did all these things. And my grandfather never really gets much credit for anything. He was a bit of a rat bag, I think. But he was a real character. So my granny, she was amazing. But she lived in that's where I was going. She lived in that building, and I used to say to Dad, why don't we put air conditioning in for her? And he said, oh, no, she's used to living like the way she does, and you put air conditioning in, it'll kill her.
Can't change it up too much.
No. So imagine that. We couldn't live without it now, could we?
No.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. And,
creature
she was
comforts.
still cooking until, probably, till her mid-90s.
Wow.
She was just doing everything for herself, cooking 3 meals a day. And we would go, the extended family group, we would have breakfast there on Sundays. So I just lived. Also, when I built my shop, I built a little mezzanine sort of bed sit there. So I lived there for 10 years in my shop.
Wow.
To save money and not have to be paying rent to live somewhere as well.
Well, those are the sacrifices you have to make as a business owner, aren't they?
I think so. But you can't just go, splashing it around when you're starting out. Or maybe any time. I'm still pretty careful. So, I could see my grandmother every day. It was brilliant. We'd go there for breakfast on Sundays, and my dad would come in, and I have other uncles and aunties there. And there was always soup. There's always soup, even breakfast time. And Chinese breakfast is like a whole meal, savoury,
Right.
but just at 7 a.m., not at 7 p.m. So we'd get there, and I'd serve my dad's soup, and he'd say, okay, what kind of soup do we have today? And I'd fish around in the pot and pull out whatever and go, chicken foot or pig's trotter. I was vegetarian for a lot of years.
All right.
But
that didn't offend them?
no. I just leave the chicken's feet in there and have the soup.
Yeah.
I've never eaten a chicken foot. Have you?
I think I have, yeah. I love yum cha, so
Yes.
I try everything. It doesn't, whether it's like beef tendon or it doesn't matter. I'll try it
You'll
all.
try
I love
everything.
it. Yeah, I love it so much.
Oh, okay.
I used to go to university down in Adelaide, so there was a big yum cha scene there. So I can't get enough of that,
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. My husband, he eats duck's tongues.
Oh, wow.
Have you tried duck tongue at Yum Cha?
No,
Oh.
never tried that. I'll put it on the list next
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
This time of year, you're speaking about the numbers going up 300, 400, 500. We had 12,000 people at the AFL last night. I don't know if you were one of them.
No, I went to the game on Saturday.
Oh, previous.
The previous one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you an AFL fan or just...
Kind of by osmosis. My husband Daryl is a crazy Collingwood supporter.
No.
I know.
Yeah, yuck. I'm a Richmond supporter, so I'm not much better.
Oh,
but
yes,
we are
right.
better. But we are better.
Oh, yeah,
Just a
okay.
little, just a
whatever.
little bit. So do you notice around, so it's middle of May at the moment, do you notice that influx of tourists, is that sort of when business really starts improving for you? Is that noticeable in the retail space?
Oh, it's what we live for. Things don't turn around. From Christmas until Easter, it's just the worst time in fashion retail.
Yeah.
When it's hot, no one's doing anything. No one's got any money after Christmas or whatever, and then back to school, and there's so many other demands. So once the dry hits and more people are coming to town, and also there's more events on.
People getting married.
People getting married, black tie events. Tonight there's the Starlight Foundation have a fundraiser on, and there's 800 people going, and it's black tie.
Wow.
That has a fantastic impact on better end of dressing up.
Sure.
For this town.
Do you sort of have to make your money in the dry? Is that sort of the business model these days?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Same for tourism, right?
Yeah.
Hospo as well.
Sure.
So it's a very seasonal town.
Yep, boom bust.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have to just tough it out for a few months, knowing that good times are coming eventually.
Yep.
This year, it's been really tricky, and I don't want to be doom and gloomy, but it's much harder than previous.
Right.
The COVID years, I hate using, that's another C word I don't like using. The other one I use all the time.
Yep.
No. But when we were all trapped here, people were really supportive of their local businesses, and rightly so. So, we had a couple of really great years in retail because, one, everyone wasn't able or game to travel, and the sentiment was really strong around making sure that everyone got looked after.
Yeah, sticking together and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, of course, last year, I think everyone I know was in Europe.
Yeah.
And fair enough. You don't get to do anything for a couple of years, and so then, everyone's away spending their money elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I went as well this year, staying put.
Yeah.
So it's very seasonal.
Yeah. So
unfortunately.
what can we do? Is there anything that as a community we can do, or is it like incumbent on the government, the council, to sort of try and make more of an effort to get people to buy local? What sort of tactics can we employ to improve the situation for local businesses?
I was never a person that believed that government need to stick customers in my door.
Sure.
I feel like that is my responsibility.
You're a free market kind of gal.
Yes.
I like it.
That is my responsibility.
Yep.
It's my problem to work within the conditions of the day.
Sure.
Of course, we want governments to create an environment that is conducive to people living here, staying here, coming back. That's one of my things right now, getting people to come back to Darwin. So, yes, naturally we do rely on governments to create an environment that will support the population.
Mm-hmm.
and give us something that we can all, an environment we can all thrive in.
Sure.
But primarily, it's my problem too. Mm-hmm. I've got to be responsible for my own business. So if things are tough, I've got to market differently, or I've got to buy differently and carry, maybe, I don't like to compromise my business too much by reducing the quality of the goods that I carry, because I just like beautiful things. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like I need to be in the same market as Kmart, for instance, right? Does that sound wanky? But sometimes you've just got to have things that everyone that is more achievable and affordable for a bigger part of the market.
Yep.
So that I stay in business too. If things are tough, then why would I make it tougher for myself by pricing myself out of the market, or only carrying things that a very small part of the population can achieve? So we've got to take some responsibility for our own businesses and constantly evolve to suit the market of the day.
Well, listening to that is refreshing in my mind, because I think the mentality for a lot of people these days is to play the victim and, blame government for, maybe the failings or the slowing of the economy and that sort of thing. So to hear that is refreshing in my mind, because I think there's not enough of it where people are sort of taking accountability for their own situations, be it good or bad, So I respect your
okay, thank you.
Position.
Well, as a community, we need to keep coming together to constantly improve the city, the territory.
Yep.
So it makes me sad. Terrible things are happening, and I'm not denying that my own shop a year ago, some kids decided it would be fun to reverse a stolen vehicle into the front of my building. Mm-hmm. And as you know, the front of my building is all glass.
Yeah. So
that was devastating for me. I just never imagined something like that could or would happen. Mm. So at that time, I was really moved by how many people came to support me verbally, a hug, deliver food.
Wow.
Even the day that happened, the 1st of May it was a public holiday, someone came in and said, I want to buy something from you. I want to support your business. I need you to recover. And just emotionally, that was such a big deal. Mm. And just to see how everyone gathered around me was so beautiful. And I guess I never realised how strong that community sentiment is or can be. Mm-hmm. But some people were saying to me, I've got to get out of this town. This is the last straw, seeing what happened to you and your shop. I just can't take this anymore. And that made me really sad that people have run out of fight.
Yeah.
And so I hugged a lot of strangers those first few weeks. People would stop me in the street and want to hug me. And it was nice, but it's weird as well, you know.
Yeah. Did it?
But people feel like they need a hug, right? Mm-hmm. It's a group hug. So we need to be doing more hugging, I think, to support people emotionally, because, bad things are happening and it's scary.
Did it make you ever reconsider doing business in the Territory?
No.
Did it get that far?
No, I'm little, but I'm tough.
Yeah, dug your heels in. And
I just thought, well, I was trading the next day.
Wow.
I just thought, well, I can't just No, I couldn't. I just had to get the doors open. So it was a huge mess. Oh my God, it's still finding bits of broken glass. But no, I just can't quit, and that's what I was saying. I'm so stubborn. People say, "Wow, you've been in business for 31 years." I think, yeah, I must lack imagination and can't find something else better to do. No, I love it. I love it.
Well, there must, taking that sort of approach, there must be something worth, hanging around for in the Territory, right? There's a reason why we all love this place and we want to live here.
And that is community.
Yeah.
What a great bunch of people live here. And, people say to me, oh, it's so hot. How could people live here? And I always say, well, it's great that we have the build-up because it weeds out the weak ones, right? And otherwise the town would just be full of people and we wouldn't love it as much. So, I don't know, it's a really special bunch of people to stay here and
tough it out.
Yeah.
You've diversified, haven't you? You've branched out from the clothing into other
areas,
sectors of business.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, I fell in love with this guy who loves wine, and so Daryl, he was working for an international company, I guess, that distributed wine. He studied wine marketing. He loves everything about alcoholic beverages. I think we just about have every cork we ever pulled out of a bottle, we save them. And so I think I gave him the courage to step out of working in someone else's business and go it alone. So in 2001, geez, I should remember better, we started our own liquor wholesale business, and we sell premium wine and spirits to restaurants and bottle shops in the Northern Territory. And we also have some customers in the Kimberley. We sell to those beautiful resorts like El Questro and Barclay River Lodge.
Yep.
Keep trying to wheedle our way into doing some staff training there or something to get
have a
free trip to one of those beautiful places. We recently went to Bamaroo Lodge, Bamaroo, just down the track near Shady Camp.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Mary River,
that's beautiful.
That is magnificent country out there. Yeah.
So Daryl sells. He's the wine guy. I'm the shirt lady. Well, I call us the best dressed drunks in town. And so we've started a little retail arm as well. It's only very small, but we have a website that you can shop online for wine locally.
Okay.
It's called Liquor Down Under.
Okay.
So liquordownunder.com. That's our wine retail website.
Yep.
And we have a little shop in the city, which isn't open a lot, but we do wine tastings, and he's really passionate about wine education as well.
Okay.
So it's not just about necking wine. He loves to educate people on the different characteristics of each wine variety and all the technicalities.
Yeah.
I've learnt a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big drinker, but I love great champagne, and Riesling. Riesling is my
go-to
drop of choice.
Yeah. So how do you find going up against your Woolworths, BWSs, and your Thirsty Camels and that sort of thing, or is your market sort of much more niche than
Very
that?
nichey.
Yeah.
We just want to be the little boutique that sells what everyone else doesn't, in terms of quality or brands, and so we're not the $10 a bottle shop.
Yep.
But everything isn't $50 a bottle either.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to sell quality wine to people who enjoy wine in moderation.
Sure.
And think about their drink as well. You know, it's not just, you sit there, you think about, you taste it and you think about the wine and you talk about it. And he loves talking about wine.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we have someone here from a McLaren Vale winery today that we'll be doing a tasting later. So you can't compete with those behemoth liquor retailers.
Yeah.
They really own the market. It's a shame because everything just sinks to the same kind of
Standard.
Yeah. They're not trying very hard. And especially there are a lot of people who really enjoy wine and enjoy thinking about their wine, not just getting on the, stuff. And, so to have someone like Daryl who can talk to them about it and just share that information, people really enjoy that opportunity. It's refreshing for them to not just walk into a big barn full of booze and think, okay, what do I grab?
Yeah.
They can, and he's so good that he can, if you came in and said, okay, I usually drink this or I like this style, then he's just tried so many of them and he remembers them all that he can say, okay, well then maybe you should try this, this or this.
Yeah.
And, just help people be a bit more adventurous about their choices. Yeah.
For budding entrepreneurs, you've been in the game for 31 years. What sort of advice would you have for someone maybe looking to get into retail? Would you recommend it to them? Would you say, look, it's a tough game, look elsewhere? If you had a time machine, would you go back and do everything the same? Sort of, what's your sort of, looking back now, what's your advice to people?
Young people.
Coming up
the young people
I'll say
today.
coming up behind you.
Well, you can't be soft, right? Like I'm a crier. I always say that I'm a crier. Having a cry is a really good thing. Don't discount that as a good therapy. I think you need to have a really great support network.
Yeah.
Because you do want to have a cry. I must have had a big sook every day for the first few years, thinking, holy hell, how am I going to pay the bills? That's one big thing for me. Pay your bills. Pay your bills
on time
before you have a holiday.
Right.
Put your suppliers first because they will look after you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do have a rough patch, they're going to carry you through that. And I had my times when I couldn't pay on time, but I just ring them and say, I'm really sorry, but I guarantee you, and you just make little payments along the way.
Yep.
Just so they knew I was genuine. And, I have suppliers now that I've had the whole time I've been in business, and they trust me and they support me, and I just know that if I needed help, that would be there because I've always tried to do the right thing for them.
Yep.
And, it's a teamwork. It's like it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same for raising a business.
Yeah.
You've got to have people that have got your back. So you've got to do the right thing by everyone. So you don't go having your monthly trip to Bali if you're not paying your suppliers. And always pay your Darwin suppliers first because they're the people you're going to bump into at a party or, down the street.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a big one for me.
Yep.
And, having really good support because you just need people to bounce ideas off.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you think you have a great idea. Oh, I love all of my ideas. But some people then tell me, no, that's a terrible idea, Darl. Don't do that.
Well, that's good. That sounds like you don't have a bunch of yes men around you, pumping you up and
No, no.
That's
I
important.
have 4 brothers.
Yeah, well, they'll bring you back down to earth really quickly. Well, I think that's so important. Yeah.
So, but my husband, he's my rock. He thinks everything I do is fabulous. Yeah, support, respect for everyone around you is really important, and for their needs, because you're not in it alone. Even though it might just be you in your business, you've got to rely on everyone else. So, what else?
But you were saying, you don't be soft, and I know there was truth in that, but I know there was some sort of tongue-in-cheekness about it as well. Is business something that you just suggest to people to just jump into because you learn by doing?
Oh no, you've got to be calculated about your risks. When I was starting mine, I went to the ABS, the Bureau of Statistics, and I did my little demographic studies. And,
wow.
I had to, the bank, I needed to borrow some money. And the bank said, well, you need a business plan. You need budgets and forecasts. It's like, okay, you just make that stuff up really, because if you're starting something from zero, how do you forecast what you're going to do?
Sure.
But you've got to think about worst case scenario. So this is what I did. I thought, if the worst thing happened, I'll only get myself in a certain amount of debt that if I had to go and get a proper job, I'd still be able to pay off that debt.
Yep.
So don't go crazy borrowing money that you can't afford to pay back, and have a plan. You've got to have a plan, because you don't know where you're going otherwise, right? You need a map. So don't just jump in. No way. Could never advocate for that. But you have to have some balls.
Yeah.
And back yourself.
Sure.
Otherwise, my friends all saying to me, oh, no one buys nice clothes in Darwin, you're crazy. But I did some research, and then I just started out, little, and then grew. So yesterday, actually, my manager, Angela, was saying to me, I think we need to put another floor on this building because I feel like I've outgrown that building.
And that's a big space, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
2 floors, one of the larger retail spaces in Darwin.
When I started, I had 100 square metres in my grandma's building, and now it's about nearly 600. The previous one was 230. So it has grown a lot, and now we've been nearly 7 years in our own building.
Yep.
And I wish I could have put another floor on there. And I was saying, oh no, if we're going to put 1, we'll put 2 on. But anyway, it's not happening. I'm too old. Gosh.
No thoughts about expansion. You're happy with what you've got.
Yeah. I've always been pretty content with. I haven't wanted world domination. When I do some induction for people starting working with us in the shop, I walk around the shop and I talk about the brands and say, oh, this is Ralph Lauren and he started in 1962 and blah, blah. Tommy Hilfiger, he started in 1990, but not 92 or something, not long before me. And I think, oh, my God, look what Tommy did and look what I'm doing, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
I have control issues.
Right.
So I can't let go of anything, right, to let other people do it. So I could never get much bigger because I couldn't be on top of everything.
And you're not having any thoughts about selling or anything like that?
Oh, everyone has thoughts about selling, I think, when they're in business. I didn't for years.
Right.
But I'm getting on. I'll be 60 next year.
Right.
Geez. So... And I've had offers to buy my business, and I always said no. In the past, I haven't had any desire to. But now I'm starting to think, okay, if someone came along with the right offer, then I'd consider it. But I still love it, and I guess I would worry that someone wouldn't love it as much as me. It's like giving away my baby, I guess.
Yep.
And would someone be as good as me? Because I'm so good. So I feel like for my community's sake, I need to keep doing this.
Sure.
Because who would be as good as me, right? Who would know all the stuff that I know?
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's a weird situation.
Yeah. But if the right offer came along,
And I had
you'd think about
confidence
it, yeah.
that they would do the right thing.
tick all the boxes.
Yeah, I'd feel like I wouldn't want to sell my business to someone that I would worry they would go broke, because I wouldn't want to put someone in that position.
Sure.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to turnkey, and you want to make sure it's a going concern. It's all of those things, so that someone else can
Run with it and make it better.
That's right. That's right.
Not go, holy hell, this is too complicated, and not be, not be there in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to put someone in a bad position.
Yeah.
So.
Going forward, we'll finish on this one.
Okay.
Are you confident about the territory moving forward? Are you happy with where we're at, or could we do more?
Oh, I think any place could do more. We need to do more. There's still so many opportunities here. So funny you say, do I think about trying to grow my business? Every day I think, I wish I was 5 years younger and had more energy, or 10 years younger, and I would do this or this. And there are so many things still here to be done. And certainly in retail business and in business and in the greater community, there are so many things that aren't done here, could be done better. We all need to try harder.
Yep.
I've said to people, if you want to come to Darwin, or if you want to start a business in Darwin, it doesn't take a hell of a lot of effort to stand out from the crowd. Just put yourself into it, and you can have an excellent business. And we all need to try harder. I would really love to see an environment where more kids like me came home to Darwin and did something here in business or in a job that can have a huge impact, because I feel like that would be easier than trying to attract people who have never lived here before.
Yeah.
Darwin kids, they already know the lay of the land. They already know what the weather's like. All the hard stuff is overcome in that regard.
Well, that's almost business 101, isn't it? It's cheaper to keep an existing customer, so it's cheaper to maybe keep your locals.
Lure back the Darwin
lure them
kids.
back. Well, hopefully I'm the embodiment of that, because I was born and bred here. I went to university in Adelaide, and I've come back and started a business, and I'm raising a family now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great.
hopefully,
and you're doing
I'm the one you're
things-
talking about. The
Yes.
people you're referring to.
Yes, and I want to see more of that. So I think that certainly governments can create a better environment around that. I don't know what the lure is, but then I hope someone's having those conversations in government.
Yep.
And I would love to be a part of that too, because Darwin kids rock, right?
Yep.
Or Tennant Creek kids.
I'm both, so
Yeah.
I'm territory kids. Let's just say that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't you think it would be good to see, we go live interstate and we come home with ideas.
Yeah.
And, I look at some of our friends like Pippa Ainsworth, who owns the Trader.
I went to school with her.
Yeah, and what brilliant things she's been doing with food and her bar, which, the cafes. And I really feel like she changed her and her sister Louisa, they really changed the way cafes look in
Right.
this, that they just evolved that whole cafe scene.
Yep.
When they came back to Darwin. And I see other people, their children are coming back, they're doctors, and they already know what the challenges are here. So it makes sense
Yep.
if we can get more of them home to do these things and make some cool stuff happen here, then I think that's going to be a really good thing for the territory.
Absolutely. Well, Darlene, on that note, I really appreciate you being here, and I know how busy you are, so we'll let you go, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Sorry, hopefully.
No, it was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.